Hey, what is going on, guys? This is the SS Ultimate Goku back another video. Um, and so today I wanted to make a discussion, and I might make a few more follow up different topics related to this, but I wanted to talk about since obviously I already recently talked about unfortunately the goat Chuck Norris is passing. Um, But so you guys can my thoughts on that. But I've already talked about that, and how much of an impact Chuck Norris was on to me. But what I wanted to talk about is specifically the show that, let's say everybody, but specifically most people know Chuck Norris from, and that's Walker Texas Ranger. Now, obviously, a lot of people know Chuck Norris going all the way back to his karate days. I mean, the Karate Champion, other movies, even the original Texas Ranger movie, Long Wolf McQuade, which that's another topic that we could even talk about specifically, since that was kind of the origins of the whole Texas Ranger concept to begin with. That Walker played that movie in the early 80s, as well as other movies as well that Chuck Norris is known for. But specifically going into the Walker Texas Ranger, because this is a franchise that I beloved as a kid. Um, and, I've made no bones about it of my opinions on the reboot series that was made a few years ago. And I still have my opinions on that. Um, to me, uh, Walker Texas Ranger is a show that should never, in my opinion, should have never been rebooted to another actor. If you want to bring back the Texas Ranger concept, that's one thing, but don't call the character Cordell Walker and then the entire supporting cast aren't the same characters. No, no, dude. Just make a new Texas Ranger show at that point. And I said that years ago, and I still firmly believe that that show should never have been called Walker, um, because it it misrepresented the audience that they were trying to appease to by calling it Walker. By still saying that they were going for a young demographic, but yet they were also at the same time uh, trying to appease older fans from the old series, which doesn't make any goddamn sense because the show had zero similarities to the old show, other than it being a cop show and you know, uh, the main character being named Cordell Walker. That was it. Um, but getting back to the series, one of the biggest things, um, and I've kind of said this before, but one of the things that unfortunately, when it came to Walker Texas Ranger, is I always felt that the show ended way too soon. Um, Ended in 2001, and it had a big epic climax. And obviously, we know the story. I mean, everyone should know the story to why the series ended. The series ended because Chuck Norris made the decision to end the series. That was why the series ended. Okay. Uh, it didn't end because CBS said, "Hey, we gotta, this is it." No. As a matter of fact, CBS wanted to go for at least two more seasons. There was indications that CBS wanted to go for at least two more seasons on Walker Texas Ranger as a show. Um, However, they only wanted to do it if Chuck Norris was involved, and we're going to get to that as well. Um, Fact of the matter is, The show was at its peak. And Chuck Norris, I thought, and I think he's already indicated this. He indicated this, that like he felt that, he didn't want the show to go down in quality, um, and then be forced to be in cancellation territory, which, in hindsight might absolutely been the right move, um, considering how things get shut down. Especially in this day and age, you see shows just come and go all the time. So maybe Chuck Norris was smarter than everyone was, especially in those days. In 2001, I mean, this was pre a lot of things. 2001, this was before even 9/11 happened. Um, so obviously the world changed after that, like in terms of other things. So, I mean, that's how far back this goes. Um, so could the series have lasted longer, had it gone on, maybe like, let's say, like until like 2002, right? Because they ended in early 2001, right? Um, could it have lasted longer? Um, I do believe it could have, because I think it was still, I mean, the ratings for the last season weren't as good as some of the previous seasons, but for that time period, of, cable ratings, they were getting ratings that were just as good as like some of the bigger events in modern day cable. So the ratings they were getting, um, were great for that time period. Um, Despite some of the dips that's also Chuck Norris was he was 60. And that was on the guys. So that's another thing that went into it. So could there have been more effort to continue the series, like in a different way? I think there would have been perfect ways to have done it. You see shows, um, for example, like since this technically was a cop show, even though obviously it was far from that at times. Um, you see shows like Law and Order, for example, which branched out into other Law and Order shows, and some of them uh, are probably even better than the original. Okay, so the could the Walker Texas Ranger show branched out into other shows and become a franchise? Yes, and that is where I think lies the missing link to Walker Texas Ranger. While the show ended, and probably was the right call by Chuck Norris, because if they did go on another season, which I do think it would have still been fine if they had done another season, um, they chose to pad it out for another year. I think it would have still been fine, but him retiring the series a year earlier before a year late was probably the best decision for the series as a whole. But could there have been more done in terms of the spinoff series? Yes, I do. So one of the things that was proposed by Chuck Norris himself was to have the characters Sydney and Gage, who were introduced in the second last season of Walker Texas Ranger. Um, they were introduced specifically because Chuck Norris wanted, reportedly, and I think he had mentioned this before, um, that he specifically wanted the series to continue on with like a spinoff series with Sidney and Gage. Now, I don't know exactly what Chuck thought. I think there was also, he mentioned it in his autobiography as well. But I think one of the things that was discussed, and I don't know Gage and Sidney's actor specifically has ever really talked about it or if it was seriously considered. But one of the things is that they did a spinoff series of the Texas Rangers. I don't know what the show would have been called. Obviously, it would have been called something involving Texas Rangers because their characters would have still been Texas Rangers. Okay, so I don't know how far that would have gotten, and I don't even know if it would have worked as a series because again, wouldn't have had Chuck Norris in it. So that would have been huge shoes to fill because while all these characters, Trebek, Alex Cahill, C.D. Parker, Gage, Sidney, all of them were the actors behind them were all tremendous, and they all did great at their roles. Walker Texas Ranger was all built around Chuck Norris. It was all built around Cordell Walker. Okay. So that would have been the hurdle they would have had to have overcome. And that's probably why CBS was not interested in it. CBS was probably not interested in it due to the fact that they probably didn't think that this show could be successful without Chuck Norris involved. Even though they would have probably had, for the spinoff show, they probably would have had pretty much all the same people working on it. Okay, that was working on Walker Texas Ranger at the time to make a smooth transition. CBS didn't want to hear it. And the show was never greenlit, and I don't even know how seriously it was ever considered. I do know that for a while, Chuck Norris did believe that this could happen because, and I do remember this, is that Sidney and Gage did get a lot more screen time in some of the season. I think it was in the latter half of the second last season, where they started to get a lot more screen time from these characters that were introduced. And it was mainly done specifically because they wanted to get the viewers ready for them potentially being the new main characters in a spin-off series. Now, once Chuck Norris realized that CBS was never going to go for this, was never going to go for this whole idea, he then just made himself more centered in the in the show because of it towards the finale, because he did have Chuck Norris took significantly less screen time in some of the episodes leading up to the finale because of the fact that he wanted to get the viewers ready for a potential spinoff with some of the other Texas Rangers. So that's why that was done. Where could it have gone after that, though? Because obviously, after the show was retired, 2005, 4 years later, they decided to make a movie. Walker Texas Ranger Trial by Fire. Now, this didn't work out. It was poorly received. And this show, the movie was that movie was supposed to lead into a potential spinoff series, or a potential, revival, or another movie. Um, Now, of course, that never happened because the movie didn't do that well. And so then CBS never really tried to do anything Walker related until the dumb reboot that they did on CW. Uh, you know, Trail by Fire was not handled good at all, especially with the ending. Spoilers if you hadn't seen the ending. Alex K. Hill gets shot in the courtroom. Who is Walker's on-screen wife at this point, because at the end of the series, they got married and they had a daughter. Um, and that's how the series ended. And so the movie, the Walker Texas Ranger Trial by Fire, really it really dampered, I think, the series' reputation because of how bad the movie was, and it didn't lead to anything, unfortunately. They did this whole idea of this cliffhanger ending, where she gets shot in a courtroom, and we have no idea if she lives or dies. Um, and they did this because they thought that people would watch it, and people watched it, that they would get the sequel. But unfortunately, it was poorly received, and it did not go anywhere. Um, so the show, unfortunately, now has a hanging element that never got resolved. Um, so, what could be the future of Walker Texas Ranger? Well, there really is only one option, and no, I'm not talking about the stupid reboot. And I said this when the reboot happened, that the only show revolving around Walker Texas Ranger I ever want to see is them doing something involving Walker Texas Ranger's daughter, Cordell Walker's daughter. Cordell Walker at the end of the series had a daughter. He had a daughter, and Angela, his daughter, on screen was a baby. Um, Obviously, she'd be an adult now, if the show was to be created and take place like in today's world. She would be, an adult, and that would be the only series I would ever want to see. I would want to see them do something where the daughter is a Texas Ranger trying to live up to her father's legacy. Now, obviously, they can't have, unfortunately, Walker as a mentor because, Chuck Norris is not with us, and I would not want anybody, again, to be Cordell Walker. Because I don't think anybody should have been Cordell Walker other than Chuck Norris. So that's what I want to see. Will we ever get that? Probably not, because there's a couple of reasons why. But for one, I just don't think CBS wants to do anything involving the old series. Genuinely, I don't. Two, the person who plays Angelia, Chuck Norris's daughter, I believe has to be someone that has some type of martial arts background, and has to be someone that can, live up to the legacy that Chuck Norris brought up. However, third thing to why I don't think the series will ever happen is because what we didn't know, what you probably don't know watching this video, and I didn't know at the time when they decided to make the reboot series, and most people probably didn't know, is that Chuck Norris sued CBS because of there was stuff going on with self dealings. CBS was intentionally, selling the rights, streaming rights to Walker Texas Ranger at a low rate to their own streaming service. And because of that, Chuck Norris wasn't able to get the full amount of royalties that he was supposed to get. Because of this led to a lawsuit which Chuck sued CBS for $30 million. And he sued CBS for $30 million, and it was eventually settled out of court. We don't know what the terms were, but obviously Chuck Norris got paid handsomely for it, for him to settle. But because of that, this is probably why the reboot series didn't involve other characters. Which, again, that doesn't really have an issue as long as they don't use the Walker character, which they did. Wonder why there. But nonetheless, these are probably the reasons to why the series will never get any type of new content. Obviously, without Chuck Norris involved, obviously it's going to not still be as good no matter what, because nobody's going to top Chuck Norris with this series. But in terms of the franchise, it's probably not going anywhere in terms of getting new contents or getting a spin-off series, which I think spin-off series in series can work because it's been proven. It can happen. But with this series, unfortunately, some of the events that led to the series' downfall, which, it didn't really have a downfall, at least the TV series didn't. The TV series didn't have a downfall because Chuck Norris chose to step down. But unfortunately, with the sort of, revival, movie that they made for it, didn't click well with people. And because of that, that was really kind of the last effort. If that movie had done well, probably things would have been different for the series. We probably would have gotten new content. We probably would have gotten things that could continue the show in some capacity. And spin-off series might have happened. But unfortunately, none of that stuff happened because poor choices from the people that did the trial by fire. The decisions within that movie were not well received. And obviously the ending left a huge cliffhanger that most TV goers that watch series and are invested in series, especially long-standing series like this, they don't want to see that. They don't want to see a series end that way. And honestly, if I'm being completely honest with you, I would have rather that movie never been made. To being completely honest, that movie should have never been made. Because that movie ruined the perfect ending that the original series did. The series ended on a high note, and it had a trash movie come back a couple years later and kind of ruined that. And now, you'll never see a true result to said movie as a result. We don't get to find out if Alex Cahill Walker survived. We don't get to see that, you know, which I do believe she would have survived, by the way. I don't think her off as a character because there were a couple of times she almost died in the series. So I don't think she was going to die. Like, I think they would have gotten her to the hospital in time, survived if they had made a new movie. Because why would you leave it as cliffhanger? If the intent wasn't for her to survive the next movie. So, yes, my personal opinion, I do think Alex Cahill Walker was going to survive. I don't know if Alex Cahill's actors ever spoke on that, like if her character was supposed to live or not, but I do believe she was supposed to live. I think the intent was for her. The only main character, well, technically, Walker's uncle also died, but he was a character that was early on in the series. But outside of him, the only real main character that died was C.D. Parker. Now, C.D. Parker died mainly because he left the cast. Now, when he left the cast, they originally said he was going on a vacation or whatever, and then, he died later on off screen after he had already left the cast. It was like already several episodes he had already left the cast, but then they mentioned him off screen that he had died, and they originally thought, he just died by natural causes or whatever it was. I forgot what it was. It was a heart attack or something, but they originally thought he had died. Like, I think it was a heart attack, if I'm remembering correctly. But then, of course, it was changed to him being poisoned. They later found out in an autopsy that he died from poisoning. And then, obviously, that led to the finale where they killed the final villain, or they took down the final villain because he was the one that was responsible to C.D. Parker having the poison. So, but yeah, outside of that, they really didn't want to kill the main casts. Like, it was very rare to do it. And again, they only really did it to C.D. Parker because Parker had left the cast. And so it was easy for them to use, him since he was no longer he was not coming back to the cast. So it was easy for them to just be like, let's kill his character off to create drama for the final villain, because that's what they did. They turned his what was a heart attack into a serious murder thing for the final episode. So yeah, I mean, that was the thing, like, that they would do. Unfortunately, like I said, I don't think the series is ever coming, like, in terms of any capacity, in terms of spinoffs or anything like that. I don't think it's ever happening, especially since obviously there was issues between Chuck Norris and CBS at the end, with the lawsuit that we didn't know about, that we know about now. Well, maybe you guys don't know about it because not many people really actually know about it. But yeah, there was a lawsuit, and it kind of dampened a lot of things. Point being is that you're probably never going to see any new content for this series, specifically the universe that Chuck Norris's Walker is in. Will they try to do some reboots? I mean, obviously, they already did it once. Um, will they do it again? Possibly. My personal take is that I don't think Cordell Walker should ever be used again. I don't even think it should have been used when he was alive. I definitely don't think it should be reused again. Um, I still think the daughter um, would have been the best option. But again, you have to get somebody that actually um, can carry that show. Um, but yeah, that's my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think of this. Comment, rate, if you're my videos, please subscribe. Hit the notification bell for today's contents. Thank you. And that's what it, guys. I'm the S Ultimate Goku. I'm out of here. Till we meet again. Out. Peace.